Red Bun means we're live, a casual take with your boy Stephen Pepper, here to give a take off my chest. So Jim Harbaugh and his Chargers lost to John Harbaugh and his Ravens 30-23 on Monday Night Football for the the Harbaugh Bowl. And my takeaway from last night is that was a reality check for the Chargers. It was a reminder that even after all their winning, they're still at least a year away. You know, after they impressed on Sunday Night Football against the Bengals, there was a lot of talk about, is this a real player in the AFC this year? But then the Ravens came to town and showed him what a real contender looks like, which, by the way, there is nothing wrong with being a year ahead of schedule. Like, raise your hand if you thought the Chargers at this point in the season were going to be 7-4 with a real shot at the playoffs in the first year of the Jim Harbaugh era. Because I sure as hell didn't. But when you take a deep dive into their record, you can tell why this team's at least a year away. They're 6-0 undefeated against teams below 500, and now just 1-4 against the big boys. They feel like more of a one and done than a team that's actually going to make some noise in the playoffs. Like, all four of their losses have been to teams above 500. The Steelers, the Cardinals, the Chiefs, and now the Ravens. And their only win was against the Broncos, which is a good win, but it was in week 6. What this team feels like is a coach-quarterback duo that has overachieved so much that it's brought them to like almost right there, but they just have a few too many holes to be considered a contender anytime soon. And if I'm the Spanos family, my first action would be to call Michael Rubin of Fanatics and get the ball rolling on printing some T. Higgins jerseys because this team needs them bad. Like, they desperately need a perimeter threat on the outside because they don't have one. I think they also need more of a healthy running back, an interior offensive line help because, I mean, their tackles are great, Slater and all, but that center guard's a little shaky, and maybe some more run support on defense. But that wide receiver thing, I don't think you can go forward with Quentin Johnson as your outside wide receiver in big games. You know, Colin Cowherd always says when it comes to rookies, you can judge them after Thanksgiving year 2. And we're a couple days, like 2 days away from Thanksgiving, and this is Quentin Johnson's second year. This guy's a flat out bust. He was drafted before Zay Flowers, who we played against last night on the same field. Jordan Addison was also drafted after him. He had a stellar game on Sunday. You put Johnson next to Flowers and Addison, they don't look like they're in the same stratosphere. This guy, I think, has the worst hands in the league. You cannot have Justin Herbert throwing to those guys in big games. Listen to this stat. When Justin Herbert was targeting Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer, who I think Palmer's solid, but he can't be your number 1, number 2 wide receiver when you're trying to win something serious. He completed just 3 of 13 passes for 38 yards. All 3 completions with the Palmer. Johnson put up a donut hole. But when Herbert was targeting the rest of his unit, 18 of 23, really good day for 175 yards. That's McConkey, Disley, a couple running backs, more weapons. You can't have Johnson out there. And it brings you back to the conversations during draft night. Should the Chargers instead have picked Malik Nabers at 5 instead of Joe Alt? Which, to me, I still hold tight and believe they made the right decision taking Alt at 5 because a player of Alt's caliber is a lot harder to find than a player of Nabers. I mean, they took McConkey in the second round, and I think they can find another Malik Nabers in the next year's draft or free agency. And who's going to be the number 1 target that a lot of teams are going to go after in free agency? T. Higgins. Because this team desperately needs to have wide receiver at the top of their top to improve. You know, the Bengals, I feel like they're going to spend money elsewhere, especially on defense, and T. Higgins is going to enter free agency market looking for a bag, and the Chargers have the cap space to do it. They need to go after a T. Higgins. Can you imagine if Herbert threw to T. Higgins on that third down play when they were down 23-16, trying to come back and tie that game instead of Quentin Johnson? Johnson dropped that wide open ball across the middle of the field, which in my opinion ended the game right there because that was a promising drive. They're down 7, trying to get back in that game. He drops it. They punt. The Ravens go down, score a touchdown, pretty much put the game to bed. But imagine that's T. Higgins. T. Higgins is hooping like a wide receiver number 1 with Joe Burrow. I don't think there's much of a difference between Burrow and Herbert. So imagine what he's going to do as the wide receiver number 1 for the Chargers. But again, nothing wrong with the Chargers getting a little reality check. I think this team's good. They're going to be competitive. I think they're going to make the playoffs. To be 7-4 in the 6th seed, they're in a real prime position. They still got the Raiders, the Patriots. They have a fair schedule. And coach-quarterback combination wins some games. They're going to be competitive even in that playoff game. And I like their foundation going forward. This is a good team. Harbaugh, I think, is in line for Coach of the Year. You got Herbert, who I think is a top 5 quarterback. Alt, Slater, good tackles. You have pieces on the defensive end. I like Ladd McConkey. I think he was a home run pick, but he's not a true wide receiver number 1 on the outside with some real speed, downfield, 20-plus yard ball, and that's the receiver they need going forward. They're not going to win anything big with Quentin Johnson out there. So I think the Chargers on the same field as the Ravens on Monday Night Football kind of got reminded like, okay, that's what a real contender looks like. Again, there's nothing wrong. The Chargers over-under at the preseason was 8.5. They're already at 7, and it's like week 13. They're going to exceed that because of their coach quarterback duo and the foundation that they have. But when it comes to competing and being a real player in the AFC, they're still a year away. Again, nothing wrong, but they just got reminded last night like they're a year away. But I appreciate everyone for tuning in this episode of A Casual Take. Follow my social media, stay updated on all things related to the show. Until next time, see you.